Morning, Calvary. My name is Frank Turek. Before we get started, let me ask you this. How many of you have heard me before, or this is your first time? How many of you are here this morning? How many of you do not respond to surveys? Okay, just checking. How many of you believe this book? I don't know why. In our culture today, this book is not believed. We're told there's no such thing as truth. We're told it's true for you but not for me. We're told there is no God anyway. We're especially told this, that miracles are not possible. And this book right here is filled with miracles, so how can you believe it? We're told that miracles such as the resurrection, or parting the Red Sea, or God forbid Jonah, who can believe that? We're told those miracles are just too incredible to believe. We're also told that the New Testament has really been changed throughout the centuries, if you've been reading the Charlotte Disturber lately. And so you can't believe the New Testament either. That's all made up. They made that whole thing up, and some will say, well, it's even contradictory. So why are you even here this morning? You should have slept in. Is it true? Let's go to Acts chapter 26. Acts chapter 26. Paul is on trial before two higher-ups. He's on trial before the governor Festus, and he's also on trial before King Agrippa. Now, King Agrippa is the great-grandson of Herod the Great. You know Herod the Great. He's called the Great because he rebuilt the temple. This is his great-grandson that Paul is on trial before. Now, if you remember the context here, Paul has been charged by the Jews of basically insurrection and a number of other things. And now they're in the coastal town of Caesarea on the Mediterranean. And Agrippa wants to hear what Paul has to say, because Paul has appealed to Caesar. He's supposed to go to Rome and stand before Nero with this charge. He's used his Roman citizenship to get away from the Jews. But on his way to Rome, King Agrippa happens to be in Caesarea with the governor Festus, and he says, I want to hear what this guy Paul has to say. So what does Paul do? Paul tells the story, as this Y Bell's just sang. He tells the story of Jesus and how Jesus appeared to him and how Jesus rose from the dead. Then in verse 24, after Paul gives his testimony, Festus, the governor, interrupts Paul, and here's what he says. Chapter 26, verse 24. At this point, Festus interrupted Paul's defense. You are out of your mind, Paul, he shouted. Your great learning is driving you insane. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was not confident about what I really believed, at this point, if some guy who has me on trial tells me I'm insane, what am I going to do? Yes, O excellent Festus, I will be quiet from here on out. Is that what Paul does? Not at all. In fact, what does he say? He says, I am not insane, most excellent Festus. What I am saying is true and reasonable. Then he points over at King Agrippa. Now keep in mind, Agrippa probably outranks the governor Festus here. And what does Paul do? He points over at Agrippa and he says, the king is familiar with these things and I can speak freely to him. I am convinced that none of this has escaped his notice because it was not done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe in the prophets? I know you do. Whoa! Now imagine this. You're on trial before two judges. One outranks the other. The lower-ranking judge calls you insane. And then you say, no, I'm not insane. In fact, the higher-ranking judge here knows what I'm saying is the truth. Because this stuff was not done in a corner. What must you be sure of when you say that? This is the interactive portion of the program. What must you be sure of? You must be sure it's true, and you must be sure that the king does indeed know what you say to be true. Because otherwise he might say, Paul, off with your head. That's not what happens. What happens after that? They confer with one another, and finally, at the end of the chapter, Agrippa said to Festus, this man could have been set free had he not appealed to Caesar. He's not done anything wrong. Now, question. Some will say, well, Frank, yeah, that's fine and good, but it's still in the Bible. How do you even know that this event happened? How do you even know that Paul did indeed stand before Agrippa and said these things? I'm going to tell you in a minute, but let me just ask you this. If this did indeed happen as Acts says, don't you think that's pretty good evidence that Paul truly did believe Jesus rose from the dead and did see him, and Agrippa even knew about it? Think that's good evidence? The question is, did he say it? Did it happen? The skeptics say, I don't have enough faith to believe this book. What I want to tell you today is, I don't have enough faith not to believe it. What do I mean? We wrote a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. It argues for Christianity from the ground up, from the very issue, does truth exist, all the way to the point that the Bible is the Word of God. Now, as Chuck said, we've got the book in the back. You can get it afterwards. What I'm about to do is sum up a 450-page book in less than 30 minutes, which turns out to be about 15 pages a minute. I can do it, though, because I'm from Jersey. Can you tell? Got a couple folks from Jersey back here. You want a piece of me? I have divided loyalty this morning. Go Panthers, somebody said. Yes, I am indeed from Jersey, which means I speak at 150 words a minute with gusts to 350. So if I go too fast, get the tape, get the book, whatever, and you can get more data on it there. You with me so far? All right, let's go. Let's talk about, before I go, the book. The book is in the back, and I just need to point out that all the proceeds from the sale of the book will go to feed needy children. Mine. Okay, just so you know. All right. This can't be true. This book can't be true if there is no truth. If you look in your little bulletin there, we're going to cover 4 points. Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament, the Bible. However, this book can't be true if there's no such thing as truth. And how often have you heard in today's culture, truth is relative, there are no absolutes, you like chocolate, I like vanilla, it's true for you but not for me. You've heard that, right? What's the problem with that logic? In fact, I heard it on WBT about 10 years ago. There used to be a guy on radio here called Jerry Klein. You remember him? Well, somebody called into him. He was taking calls on right and wrong, truth, morality, that whole thing. And some people were saying, I think this is true about morality. And other people were saying, no, I think this is true about morality. And one guy called in and said, Jerry, there is no such thing as truth. Well, I picked up the phone. I started dialing. I wanted to get on so bad and say, hey, Jerry, to the guy who said there's no such thing as truth, is that true? You see, that is known as a self-defeating statement. If I were to say to you, I can't speak a word in English, what would you say? You just did, right? It's a self-defeating statement. It turns out all these objections that you hear in the culture today are self-defeating. If somebody says there's no such thing as truth, say, is that true? If somebody says all truth is relative, you say what? Is that a relative truth? No, it's an absolute truth. If somebody says there are no absolutes, what should you say? Are you absolutely sure? If somebody says it's true for you but not for me, what should you say? Is that true for everybody? Or actually you can do it by illustration. It's a lot more fun when you do it by illustration. You say, true for you but not for me. Ha! Sure. Go try that with your bank teller. Go to your bank teller and say, I'd like $5,000 out of my account. And your bank teller says, I'm sorry, sir, you got $47.12 in your account. And you go, ha! That's true for you but not for me. You going to get your money? Or suppose you're driving down the highway just a wee bit fast, 90 and a 55. Cop pulls you over, right? He goes, "You're going a little fast there, sir, weren't you?" And you go, "Well, yeah, maybe." You're going 90 in a 55. How should you respond?